What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Travis RC. Today we're starting the EB48 2.2 build. Now I will say I'm not trying to approach this series as I'm an expert. You should follow every step that I do for building. I'm documenting my process in building my first kit and trying to use the knowledge that I've gained in my research over the last several weeks. And so far everything's been going really well, but I do want to make that caveat of saying I'm not an expert. But I think this should give you a really good idea of what approach you can take, especially if you are a new kit builder, just like myself. I did run into a little bit of a snafu and I needed Tekno's help, and they had to send me a replacement part in order to get the first set of components built. And they were super awesome. So shout out to Tekno technical support for really taking care of me. So with that, let's go ahead and let's build some differentials. Alright, so as we open up the manual here, of course there are a couple things that it outlines. Like it'll show you, oh, when you see this thing, use thread lock. When you see this thing, use grease. It tells you all the tools and everything that you are going to need and all that jazz. And then of course we can see we are starting on bag A, which is going to be our center differential. So we are going to open this big bag of parts, and I think bag A is in here somewhere. Bag A right there. Alright, so we'll go ahead and open bag A. And we have what I believe is our diff cup. Here are our spider gears and sun gears. Looks like these are going to be the out drives. Here is the, I don't know, do you call this a spur gear? I don't know. And then of course we have bearings, O-rings, the pins for our spider gears, and shims and everything else that we need in here. So as you know, this is bag A, and the way that the manual has this broken down, you got steps A1, A2, A3, and so on. So for A1 here, it looks like what we're doing is we're basically installing one of the spider gears and the out drive. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything laid out that I need for step A1. Alright, so right here I got my out drive, I got my sun gear, or whatever we want to call it. We got a bearing, an O-ring, a shim, and the pin that I believe secures the out drive to the inside of the diff cup. So there's no particular order in which you need to do this. It's just kind of all about what makes sense. I've seen a couple other build videos and I've seen people put the O-ring into the diff cup before the out drive, and I think I'm going to do that just to make it easy. I have my O-ring grease, so I'm going to take that, get a little on my finger, alright, so I got our O-ring seated down in there. There's kind of a little insert for it. It just fits right in there, and just push it in with your needle nose. Next, we are going to take a bearing, and it looks like it just goes on like this, and then the out drive is going to go in there, but we need to put some grease on the, there is a little kind of channel, if the camera will focus, It's probably hard to tell with the lighting, but there's a little kind of channel right here on this outdrive, and that's where your grease needs to go. So we're going to put some grease on there. We're going to take the black grease that's included in the kit, and we don't want much. The way that the grease comes out of this tube though is very nice. Very controlled amount that you can put on there. So I'm just going to spread it around there. Alright, then once that's good, I'm going to take the bearing and put it on the bottom here. Take the outdrive and put it through, being careful not to mess up that O-ring we already installed, which it did. So maybe the people that put the outdrive in before the bearing were correct. So we'll just push our O-ring back down. Alright, next is this little metal shim that goes over top of the outdrive. And then we have a little pin here that goes into, goes through this outdrive shaft. And there's a little hole in there, so we're going to take our needle nose, find where our hole is, position it a certain way, and that is good. So now all we need to do is put this bigger gear inside, and it's got slots down here that we are going to line up with that pin, hopefully. And then if you did it right and it's lined up, it'll sit flush down there, and you'll be able to spin it as you move the outdrive. So that's step A1. Now step A2, we need our two cross pins right here, and we need our spider gears. So there is those two. Now one thing that I am going to do is I'm going to take some of this 5,000 weight diff oil, and I'm going to put a little bit of it down here just to help the process of having that diff oil settle on its own a little bit more. So I'm not quite covering up that gear on the bottom. And now we're going to put our small gears on the cross pins. And what I want to make sure of is the little notch right here that keys in with the other pin going on top of it. So I want to make sure that is facing up. I'm just going to use my needle nose to drop it in just to make life easy. Alright, so as you can see, we got that in there. So now if I push my finger down on this and move the outdrive, you can see those gears all meshing and rotating. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more diff fluid in here quick, and then I will get the other spider gears installed here. And of course the notch needs to face down this time so it keys in with the one we just put in. And then same thing, I'll push down and I'll make sure everything is meshing and jiving. It's probably kind of hard to see, but it looks like it is. So then with that, what we're going to do is fill this the rest of the way up until we're just covering the gears at the top of the cup. And you probably can't see it very well, but we have our diff fluid in there. We just barely covered up all the gears, and there are some air bubbles in here, so now all we need to do is let this sit for, I don't know, about 10 minutes, see if our bubbles are out, and work the gears a little bit, and then we'll come back and finish this up. Alright, and we have our diff sitting in a shock stand, and it looks like we probably can't expect all of the bubbles to come out of it, but it looks like we're sitting pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and get the spur gear set up so that we can get the center diff closed. Let me move my camera. So we got our 4 screws, we got a bearing, we got another sun gear, a shim, O-ring, a pin, and our differential seal. So first things first, just like before, I'm going to get some grease on our outdrive, my bearing on here, and it looks like it's going to snap in, and that spins. So yeah, that just kind of pops on there. And then we're going to go ahead and put our outdrive in through the diff. Everything spins nice that way. All right, and then there is a bit of a channel right here that you can see, and that's where your O-ring needs to sit. So we're going to take the O-ring, and just like before, I'm going to go ahead and put some O-ring grease on here. I find it a lot easier to do the O-rings with needle nose pliers. So use the pliers to kind of shove the O-ring down into that channel, just like that. And then also similar to the inside, we're going to have a shim here so that nothing is spinning directly on our O-ring. And now we're going to put our pin in so that will secure the shim on here and then give our gear a place to live. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to what we already did. It's like it's in two different halves, and then you just kind of meet the two halves together, pretty much. So we got one half, and we got one half. Now all we need to do is do our seal, and then screw these two pieces together. So for the seal here, I'm just going to use a little bit of the black grease. That's not something on the manual, but in the couple videos that I've seen, it looks like that will help us out, keep it from falling so much, and it's never a bad thing for this to have a little bit of moisture either. So just take a little bit of it, smear it around with my finger. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the seal onto the bottom here, and then get this secured. Oh boy. All right, and I kind of have a pick here I'm just going to use to make sure that everything is aligning properly. I want to try not to catch that seal with any of the screws we're about to put in. So I'm going to go ahead and take my driver, and I'm going to get these screws a lot of the way down, but I'm not going to tighten with the driver. Which might be a challenge because that takes a little work to get through there. Alright, and then I'm going to hand tighten the rest of the way. So I'm an idiot and totally didn't realize and forgot that this gear is not secured until it is screwed into this case. So when I went ahead and picked this up, I left this gear behind on the table, and I tightened the spur gear down on there, and yeah, I'm an idiot. Alright, and just like that, our center differential is complete. Everything spins as it needs to. I'm surprised there's a little bit more resistance that it takes to make that spin than I think what I expected, but you know, we're dealing with metal gears and there's a lot going on here. So bag A complete, bag B. So bag B is going to be the front and rear differentials, and as far as I can tell, it looks like these are going to be pretty much almost identical for the most part to the center differential. So I am just going to go ahead and lay out what I need. So one difference that I noticed right away with these gears, so similar to what the spur gear was, which is plastic in the center diff. These ones that they use on the front and rear diffs they're actually metal or aluminum, I'm not sure. But that is probably a pretty key difference between the center and the front and rear. And unlike the center differential, this is called a ring gear, not a spur gear. And I assume that is because pretty much any gear that ever connects with the pinion coming off of the motor is called a spur gear. So functionality seems pretty much the same though. So I'm going to lay out enough for one of these here. Alright, so now everything directly in front of my paper towel here is what I need for one of the differentials. Keeping everything close by. So then I'm going to, of course, make sure my O-ring grease is ready to go. Take the lid off that. Make sure I have my black grease. Take the cap off that. That's all stuff that we're going to need here. So with that, I'm going to do this one a little bit differently from how I did the center. And instead of putting the O-ring in first, I'm going to do the bearing and the outdrive and then slide the O-ring over the outdrive because I know how that went last time. I'm going to go ahead and get my outdrive greased. I'm just going to put a few tiny dabs on there and then spread it with my finger. Alright, then we're going to go ahead and we are going to put our bearing on first. So bearing goes down there. Outdrive spins nicely. Alright, so just like before, I'm just going to kind of dip my O-ring in this O-ring grease a little bit and then use my finger to spread it around. Alright, we have the O-ring in, and now we take one of our shims. Press that down. Then once our shim is in there, we can go ahead and get one of these pins in through the outdrive. Okay, that is good to go. Then we're going to take one of these sun gears, slide that on, and of course make sure that pin goes in the notch. And then that should slide in there, and then we should see that moving as we spin the outdrive. Alright, so then this is going to be our rear differential because this is using 5,000 weight. It's 5,000 in the center for the diff that we just built, 5,000 for what this is going to be the rear, and then the front is going to be 7,000 weight. So I'm going to take a little bit of this now and just kind of get it in around that sun gear just to start us off. And then from there I can go ahead and get the spider gears set just the same as before. So for the ones going in first, this notch is going to be facing up. Okay, so we got that. So make sure those are all meshing, and then we go ahead and we put in the second set, and the notch faces down so that it keys in with the notch for the first set we just put in. Push that down, keep your finger on top of it, and just make sure everything looks like it's spinning nicely. Everything's meshing well. And then from there, we go in with the diff fluid. Spin that around, make sure everything's jiving all right. Check our levels. Could put a little bit more in. Spinning that around a little bit more. Make sure our gears are covered. I'll probably put a little bit more in. And then we're going to go ahead and get the other half of this. Alright, so first things first. The bearing goes onto our ring gear. And just like we've done so many times before, grease on the outdrive. And we'll slide that through the bearing that is on the ring gear. And of course remember that it can fall out because there's nothing securing it. And then we need another O-ring here, so we'll get that greased up. Use the needle nose to kind of shove it down into where it's supposed to seat. Alright, that's looking good. And that is followed by another shim and another pin. And then of course we have the sun gear, which will probably have to come off of here. And then we can go ahead and take our diff cup, double check our levels and that everything looks good, just to make sure we have enough. Give it another spin, make sure that's good. Okay. So now we are going to get the seal greased up, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this black grease, kind of rub that around. Same thing on the back side. Let it get some moisture. I'll put that on the diff cup and try to kind of line the holes up a little bit. And then I will take this gear. I probably should have done this before I put the seal on. Let me move that. Take that gear, drop it down in here. So I might have a tad too much oil, it looks like, so I will try to get some of that out somehow here. Now, I'm seeing that it's going to be easier probably for me to put the seal on the ring gear and line it up before, instead of having the seal on the cup and trying to line it up that way. And if I get this in here and lined up, it should stay in the ring gear. So then once I just line up the holes for the ring gear and the cup, we should be sitting good. All right. So now we can go ahead and get this secured, very carefully, of course. There's no binding. We can feel the teeth meshing just fine. Getting a slight bit of, it's not leakage, but it might have been just a tad. And honestly, I can only notice it because I'm OCD. And it's coming out of our screw holes on top here, so I'll use a little less on that next diff, I reckon. And that is our rear diff. And I am going to mark my diffs too. This is the center, which is easy because that has the spur gear, and the front and rear are going to have the metal ring gears. But make sure you know which is which. Next, we do the same exact thing. The only difference is going to be the oil. So the front is going to have 7,000 weight oil instead of 5. So just like before, grease our outdrive. Outdrive is greased. One bearing, outdrive goes in through the bearing, make sure it spins nicely, it does. And then we need an O-ring, a little bit of grease on there, make sure that's seated down in there nice. And then the pin to secure the outdrive. Alright, drop our sun gear, make sure that notch is in there. Put that outdrive pin, and instead, of course, of the 5,000, we are using the 7,000. So I'm going to drop some of that in here. They really give you just enough for the diffs and no more. So make sure you get more diff fluid for when it's time to service your diffs, or if you want to change the viscosities in your diffs. They give you just enough fluid for the build. Alright, so I got a little bit in there, and now we're going to go ahead and get our spider gears. My phone is absolutely blowing up for our Monster Truck Throwdown chat, talking about the show we're doing next weekend in Fowlerville, Michigan, which will in fact be actually Monster Truck Throwdown's biggest show ever, basically. 16 monster trucks, which is just a crazy amount of trucks at a show. Alright, so we got those gears down in there, so I'll push down and spin and just make sure all that's driving, and then we'll get the last set of spider gears for this build thrown down in there. And then same as before, push down, make sure everything notches in and that everything is moving. And I know my lighting isn't great, but it's moving and driving. So now we're going to go ahead with filling this the rest of the way with our 7,000 weight diff oil. And I like to go into each corner, over all the gears, through the middle, give everything the best chance it can to settle the way you need it to. I'm going to stop there and see where we're at. I don't want to overfill, which I think I probably did with the other two diffs, just by a very slight amount. Didn't overfill it, but not by much, if at all. And if you stop, you might find you need to put more in after a few seconds because it'll get down there and settle. So I'll take a little bit off the top. All right, and I think that should do the trick for that. So we'll set that aside. And then we'll go ahead and get the ring gear set up. So bearing. Make sure that spins nicely on there once it snaps in. Get your out drive. Throw some grease on that bad boy, of course, in that little kind of crevice. I like to get any excess off if I can. So we'll go ahead, throw that in there. That's all good. Now one more O-ring grease on there. And of course we throw the O-ring over the outdrive shaft and down into its little spot. And then I'll kind of use both sides of the needle nose there to shove the O-ring down to where it needs to seat. These O-rings are important, and so is the grease for them to prevent any diff fluid from leaking. And then one more shim. Alright guys, I'm running into a problem here. So essentially, this hole right here is where I need to get this pin through to secure the outdrive. The problem I'm having is when you put the shim on here, like this, I know this isn't focusing very well, is it? The problem is that when I put this shim on, I no longer have enough room to be able to slide the pin into the hole that's in here. And I noticed that this bearing is not sitting as far down as it did on the other diff. And I don't know if you can really see it on here, but that bearing is not sitting as far down on the ring gear. So I'm having a little trouble there. Alright, it's about 5 days later, and I got a hold of Tekno customer service. They emailed me back right away, and they sent us a new ring gear and some extra diff bearings as well. And I suspected that the issue that we were having was the ring gear potentially not being milled properly right around this area, so it wasn't allowing the bearing to slide all the way on. And I don't know how well you can really see that, but it doesn't sit very flush on this ring gear. So when we take the new ring gear they sent and we slide the bearing on there, it sits flush, and now we should be good to go. So shout out to Tekno customer service. They 2-day air mailed the new parts that I needed to try to get this resolved. Now granted, it didn't show up until 4 days later, but that's not their fault. That is UPS. And of course, it's always a challenge when there's parts coming from California. It's like ordering from A-Main, man. It takes forever, and I just hate how much of this stuff comes out of California. But so with that, let's go ahead and get this diff sealed up finally, and then we'll have 3 complete differentials. Just top this off a little bit. Alright, so we got our bearing on our ring gear. Get our grease on our outdrive. Alright, so outdrive goes on. Get our O-ring greased. Get the O-ring over the outdrive. And of course, use our needle nose to get that set on there. Alright, with our O-ring set on there, we will get the shim so that nothing is spinning on that O-ring. And then finally, we can get the pin put in through the outdrive. Now all we need to do is put a little bit of grease on our diff seal. Just a couple dabs on there. Spread it around with the finger. All right, and try to get that lined up in the holes on the ring gear. And I'm just going to use a pick to make sure those holes are lined up. All right, now sun gear is going to go in and make sure everything spins, which it does. You love to see it. I'm going to try to line the pin in the outdrive up with 2 of the holes. So each end of the pin has a hole. And then I'll try to line up this sun gear so it's the same way. And hopefully, when I drop the ring gear on, the holes and the pin will all line up with each other. Which I think we achieved. All right, and there is our front differential. All right, and just like that, the first components of the build are complete. We have our 3 differentials. I'm going to keep our front here right next to the 7,000 weight oil bottle, and the center and the rear differentials next to this 5,000 weight oil so that I know which is which. And I can tell these two apart because our center has the larger and plastic spur gear on there, and the rear has the smaller and metal ring gear. I will get a silver Sharpie and mark F, R, and C on them respectively, just so that I know exactly which one is which if I'm redoing diffs or changing oils or whatever. I don't want to put the weight of the oil or write the weight on the diffs just because if I end up changing them or whatever, then that's just something else to worry about. But I do have to leave town today to go out to a monster truck throwdown event. We're doing our biggest show ever in Fowlerville, Michigan this weekend, which is going to be incredible. It's just going to be insane and ignorant and in all the best ways possible. The action's going to be sweet. But as soon as I come back, we're going to continue with this build, and we're going to see if we can't get it done, and hopefully we're going to hit the track for the first time. I have a couple really cool surprises in store for this build that I can't wait to see, and then in turn share with you guys. So appreciate you sticking around. I appreciate all the new subscribers, all the views, and everything that you guys have given me. It's really cool to see, and hopefully we can build a community over time and be able to do some really cool stuff. I have a couple other really cool things planned for the channel that I can't share with you yet, but I'm really excited, and I just want to say it's going to keep content rolling even through the winter. So appreciate you guys checking this video out, and don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff, and we will see you in the next video where we continue the EB48 2.2 build series.